Call the Monday, December 6th, 2010 informational to order. We'll start off with our City Council staff report with Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. A couple of things to note on tonight's 7 o'clock agenda. Item number 12, which has changed in terms of, there was a request, this is an item which is the first, by the way, it's the first ordinance. It's a second reading of an ordinance that's come to the Planning Commission, and they recommend approval. There was initially a request to withdraw the item for council to do, and now there's a request to defer that item by the administration to January, the first meeting in January. So just so you know, that has changed from your red notes that were sent to you on Friday. If you just take a look and read those notes. Also, there will need to be an amendment for the item number 16, the balanced budget resolution, to strike two phrases, and the language is there for you to read and to move forward with that. And that, again, is just to reinstate the ordinance that was adopted by Council in 2007. And then, after our working session with Council, to change the topic, we have much interest in how the Council will appoint a new council member once the resignation of Councilmember Litz becomes effective. And so what we have before you, and Councilmember Litz will start his first day on March 7th, and so he will resign, as we had discussed, on March 6th. And so you have a colored calendar before you. There are copies for those out in the audience for those who would like one, which kind of puts those deadlines that we had talked about in that working session into a calendar, so you can take a look at that and see what you think about that. If the resignation, which takes effect on March 6th, which is the day before our county auditor, Councilmember Litz, will take office, then we will send out a press release and call for the applications, and then we would give that almost a 2-week process, ending that deadline at 12 noon on the 18th of March. And by the way, those would be available on the Internet and available to those who would want to know about that via Internet, along with the City Clerk's office. And then we would have time for the council to review all of those applications and then have a working session to narrow those applicants down to about 3 or 4 names, having a tentatively scheduled League of Women Voters for a forum on the Tuesday the 29th. That would be here at Carnegie Town Hall, would be televised, and the citizens could ask questions of those candidates. And then finally a council vote, which would take place on April 4th. And the candidate would also take oath of office immediately once the council made their selection. And again, the 30 days that you have by charter to appoint would run out then on April 5th, the day prior to the council voting and the candidate taking office. So this is just inputting all of the information that we had talked about as a council at our last working session. And I wanted you to take a look at that and then get back to me about your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Deborah? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our Audit Committee report. We are going to get an update on January 3rd from Rich Oaksel on a couple of items that they just reported to the Audit Committee last Thursday, and that's regarding the pawn shop reimbursement fund and the sanitary landfill. So again, on January 3rd at our informational meeting, Rich will update us on the reports and, in essence, present them to the council. And then it would be up to us as a council to take those recommendations, take those audits, and do what we think we should with them. Also, last week, Thursday, we did put in Rex Rolfing and Sue Aguilar as members of the Audit Committee. So now we have 4 members on the Audit Committee. So that was our first meeting last week. Any questions about the audit? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to land use.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did indeed meet last week. Councilor Erpenbach and I were the committee, and we discussed the sign ordinance as it's up and coming. Planning came forward and did a presentation on how they are revising the overall comprehensive sign plan and plan to bring that forward at sometime in the early spring. And then we also visited the commercial vehicle, and there's been a change, or the definition of a commercial vehicle. And we went over signage on a commercial vehicle, and we believe that we're on the way towards probably improving that. It's been in effect for 50 years. Technologies have changed, vehicles have changed, and there's some good ideas brought forward. Councilor Erpenbach, can you add anything to that? Very good, very good. Anybody have any questions? Or that's your job, isn't it, Jameson? Sorry about that.
That's all right, Bob.
You know, while I'm here talking about this, I'd also like to remind that I am the committee chair for the Land Use Committee, and in March sometime, maybe somebody else from that committee that's got a little bit of background in it would want to step forward and take that gavel.
We'll find some big shoes to fill, I'm sure. But good to know, yeah, we need to think about that. Any other questions for Bob? Councilor Litz, I might say. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our City Council open discussion. Any items for anybody? Councilor Aguilar.
Yes. Last Thursday, I sent you all email regarding potential changes to our inside town hall format, and I was wondering if we had any feedback regarding that change, whether you'd like me to review that. You didn't have time to read it?
Yes, I would like to have you review that because it was just a little, I did read it, but it was, a little foggy in my mind when I got to reading it. Let's put it that way.
You could just point me in the right direction and just tell me when and where.
Yeah.
Who's the new guy down there?
Was it down to we were going to do it once a month, only longer, or
right.
we're going to do it 4 times a month and shorter?
No, it would be it would be once a month. The counselor could have the entire time, which normally would be about 24 minutes. Right now, they usually run about 12 minutes unless someone has a topic that overtakes the next individual, and then they sometimes are shortened. We're looking at the potential then of each of us having one during the year, and 4 would have 2 opportunities. With having that entire period, you could either have one topic and possibly have 2 guests, because we can only have 3 on site, 2 and the moderator on site. So if you had a topic where you wanted to bring in 2 guests, you could change at the PSA time where they usually put something in between, or else you could even have 2 different topics if you like. Another idea that came forward came from Councilor Jameson, and that would be that the potential of once a month having a roundtable discussion with all of the councilors as far as what has transpired the previous month. That, again, we would not be able to do at the studio because, again, they can only seat so many people. But that would be something that we could also throw in the mix. We also talked about having footage. We've talked about, as a council, having our own district town halls over the next year. That would mean 5 for the different districts, and we would invite, or I guess that the at-large counselors could have their own, so there could be 8. But we could utilize some of that footage then within our respective taping. So instead of 2 people doing it, we would have just 1. And what we would hope then also would be that it would give the potential of having more graphics and footage out there to kind of step up the programs.
Any questions? Councilor Litz.
I would like to just kind of put forward something in the idea of maybe expanding the format a little bit. It seems to me I've heard twice that we are limiting what we can do down there because of the furniture. And, I remember Kello used to have this first Mondays, and they get more than 1 person down there, and it got rather lively. And I would think that a format, if we had counselors reviewing, 3 or 4 counselors maybe, reviewing what had happened the previous month, that'd be pretty interesting fodder. And like I say, if we're limiting something because of the furniture, it's time to get a new couch. Maybe a love seat.
Okay.
that's a suggestion we could bring forward also.
Councilor Erpenbach.
I think that we're in forum on Channel 16 every week, and so I would not be totally in favor of that idea. I mean, I'd certainly be open to talking about it, but I think we're already doing that pretty well in a pretty good format. The thing that I would just kind of back up what Sue is saying. I like that idea of giving our guests a little bit more time. Inside Town Hall is supposed to be a public service programming for, things that are going on with City Council, things that are going on in our districts. And I have found in the couple of times that I've been involved with it that 12 minutes isn't really enough to adequately talk about some of the in-depth topics that we have. And the ability then to add the artwork or to, I did one on the landfill, the gas pipeline. To be able to add those illustrations would be helpful. Again, it's a public service to the community. I think it's a good idea to revamp the way that we do it.
Also, what we found is that there are times, Councilor Erpenbach and I usually tape on the same day, and what happened this last time is that because it was on snow removal and snow gates and my section, I kind of overtook some of her time.
Yeah, Councilor Aguilar hogged the time, I'll tell you that.
But she did it to me when she did the landfill. So, but this is where some of these ideas came forward. And also, again, we'd like to do as much having footage available so it isn't just three people sitting around a table talking.
Well, we can continue this conversation. It's really meant to start, I think, was there a timeline, Councilor Aguilar, that we need to come up with a new format? Or is it-
I don't, well, it would be nice if before January so that we could start. One thing I didn't mention is that Denise would still be there to assist us with scheduling and with potential topics and the like. So, because she does do our scheduling, and at the end of December, we are not scheduled any further, it would be nice if we could make a decision about this prior to that time.
Councilor Intamin.
I think you've done a great job, and it really does sound like it'd be a good idea to do it. I suggest that we just go ahead and plan the new format. If it doesn't work out, we can always change back and do something else.
Is there a group that's working on it? I know you had a meeting with a couple of folks, but we aren't really working on it as a council, are we?
Well, I think they were looking for some leadership on our behalf of what we wanted, and just to make sure we weren't trying to overdo their budget that they've already planned for, so.
There are budget concerns that, we have to take into consideration.
Just so Denise keeps doing the scheduling, because she's extremely valuable in that.
Okay, well, very good. I think maybe then I think we've heard enough that we'll work with that new format and just do a longer scheduling. We'll talk to Denise further, too.
Thank you.
Any other City Council open discussions? Councilor Erpenbach.
Well, Councilor Rolfing and I have a challenge for the council today. We both have a mutual friend in the city of Pierre who is pastor to some of the city commissioners in Pierre. They have sent to us a challenge to the city council in Sioux Falls. They've said, use your circle of influence to come up with $25 each of us, and I've got mine. Use this, then, to have some influence in the community. What Rex and I would like to do is to challenge our fellow councilors and the mayor and whoever else is here to put $25 in the pot, and we're going to take it to the banquet as part of our influence in the community to just be helpful. And again, it is a challenge from the Pierre City Commission, and I would challenge then the Minnehaha County Commission to step in as well and throw in $25. But we'll have a kitty going here somewhere, and we'll take it down to the banquet later. So that's our challenge to you today.
Councilor
Yes,
Rolfing?
my 25 is here, and we're really excited to be able to help the banquet in this manner, and it should be a fun challenge for the rest of you, huh?
Good. Here's from Council Aguilar. Now we're going along here. We're getting it. Let's do it, guys. Thank you. Merry Christmas, too.
Merry Christmas to the banquet.
Councilor Litz, did you have something?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For some time now, I've been getting phone calls and on a subject, and it came up in our kind of the council's priorities meeting that we had the other week, but it's about administrative rule. And I don't know how to term this, but maybe the idea that code enforcement in certain areas of city government has been, I don't know if you'd say unevenly, but certainly applied in places that people have legitimate complaints. And we're talking about, I discussed it with Deborah about bringing up the administrative rule situation in Public Services Committee. And I think Kenny's the chair of that. And I just wanted to bring that forward here today to see if there's any counselors that had any additional ideas on that, or want to wait until we get to Public Services Committee, or talk a little bit about it today.
We had discussed this at our working session, I believe, and I think some of the conversation was whether or not we wanted to go over to Public Services. Are there any objections with that, frankly? And is the chair willing to accept that task?
Yes, definitely. It's something we looked at last year a little bit, working with the landfill. But I think that it's something that needs to be looked over, the use of it citywide, and taking a look also how the state uses administrative rules and how they also administer those rules. And I think maybe following some of their example might be a good idea. But I think it's something we need to look into.
Deborah Owen.
I was just going to say, I know in the Public Services Committee last year, we had talked about Legislative Research Council, which is the one who staffs all of those administrative rule hearings, but I think from the council's perspective, it was the legislators who comprised the committee who decided whether those administrative rules would go forward or not. So even though they were used by the administration, they were really promulgated in many ways by the legislative branch still. So there wasn't a delegation of their authority to the executive office. And I think that's all online for anybody who wants to look at that. So
I think really the point, and Kenny talked about the landfill as an example, but Councilor Litz also talked about code enforcement. There's some others where we have run into just kind of a stone wall in terms of administrative rules. And I think we have to continue to remember as citizens and as councilors and city leaders that the city council is really here to set policy and really here to set the legislative action for the community. And I think we have to take that role seriously. And if it is simply a review, that's fine, but maybe there is more to it than that, that review may take us deeper. And I think that we're justified in spending some time with it. I appreciate Public Service taking it on.
Okay, let it be noted, Public Services, administrative rules. Thanks, Kenny. Any other open discussion items? I'd bring up one. I was at the Carrie Underwood concert last night, which was a sellout at the arena. Hey, I like a little country. Not a lot, but a little. You got to know there's just you guys have probably certainly have been to these concerts, but there is a tremendous amount of excitement in a sellout situation. And that crowd, it's just really energizing on a Sunday night. I really enjoyed myself. I guess I just thought I'd bring that up, that it was really fun to see the arena booked and full like that. Driving through the parking lot, I did see some Iowa people and some Minnesota people, a lot of different places around the state, but I think it was one of the bigger concerts that the arena has ever done, based on the number of semi-trucks that came in and unloaded and presented a concert. So I think in some future time, we should talk to Terry Torgelson and have him come and explain, the challenges he has at the arena for its size and its construction and its space and what they need and what they don't have at the arena. And I spent some time with him, and I was educated on the challenges that the current arena has. And I think it would be good for all of us to hear from Terry firsthand. But anyway, hats off to the management at the arena. They did a great job last night. Anybody else there last night? I think our mayor was there. Mayor Huther was there. Nobody else? No?
My wife was there.
Your wife? Okay. All right, any other items for our open discussion? If not, we'll move into our presentations with Tamara with our invitation process. Hello, Tamara.
Thank you, Council Chair Jamison. Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak to you this afternoon. Earlier in the year, having a new mayor and new council members has generated an interest in how we process the invocation requests and how the arrangements are made. So I've been asked to give you a brief overview on the process. In 2009, the City Clerk's Office was asked by the Mayor's Office to assume the responsibility for scheduling the invocators. The initial listing of the invocators was supplied by the Helpline database and the Mayor's Office. This year, the listing of 119 invocators was recently updated to include pastors from 15 African churches and pastors from 6 Hispanic churches, supplied by information from Gary Colwell's office. In November of this year, we sent an invitation letter out to all the invocators, along with a schedule of the City Council meetings. The invocators have an opportunity to select the times that best work for their schedules, and they call our office or they email us their requested times, and we add them to the listing. The requests are handled on a first-come, first-served basis. To date, the 2011 schedule is 61% complete. As a reminder, all of the invocators are here on a volunteer basis. A reminder letter is sent from the City Clerk's Office to 1 week before the meeting to the invocators to remind them of their attendance. And a thank you letter, which is signed by council leadership, is mailed the day after the City Council meeting to the invocators. And I have copies of the forms if anyone wants to see them. Are there any questions?
So does the other 40% need to be filled? Are you looking for?
We may send out a reminder mid-year if they're not filled, but generally speaking, it will be filled up soon.
Okay. Do we need to pressure our personal pastors? Is that what you're saying to
You
us?
can ask them if they want to. They're more than welcome. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Thank you.
All right, Tamara, thank you. Next, we'll move into our downtown and core area development by Mike Cooper. But I would invite the mayor, if you would like to introduce this topic, as it's part of your administration. And we'll use this as your opportunity, I suppose, as well, to address the council.
Thank you, Councilor Jameson. I really appreciate it. And thank you, fellow councilors. I appreciate this as well. One of the things that we're very intrigued by and very excited about are the development efforts going on across our city. And one of the things that I've asked Mike Cooper to do to try to be more transparent with all of you is to give occasional updates on the different parts of our city. You know, what's happening, what has happened, what is coming up, just to try to keep not only you informed, but also the citizens of Sioux Falls. We're going to start that today. And what we will do is work with, of course, Deborah and her team to schedule future updates as well. But today we thought we'd talk about downtown development, the inner core development, and Mike Cooper will do that today, and then we'll reach out to other parts of the city in future presentations. But today we wanted to talk on downtown, so we really do thank you for the opportunity, and I will turn it over to Mike Cooper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Mike Cooper with Planning and Building Services. And joining me today, Jeff Schmidt with the Planning Office and Erica Beck with Community Development, who both assisted in putting together this presentation. Again, my task today is to take a few minutes and give you kind of a broad overview of not only some historical information about downtown and the core area, but also talking about some things that we're working on in terms of the future. It is a very exciting time, despite the fact that we are going through a recovery. I think there's still a lot of good things to talk about. So we do have copies of this available, and of course it will be on Granicus as we move forward with this presentation. So to start out with, we actually have a defined downtown area, which is bounded by 14th Street on the south side, on Minnesota Avenue on the west side, Falls Park boundary on the north side, and then it goes along Weber Avenue, and then transcends down through the southeast area, following some of the railroad right-of-way to connect back down to the 14th Street corner. This is an area that has kind of an interesting demographics. It's approximately 450 acres of land area, around 100 city blocks. The latest information that we have, which is not completely up to date, but it's the best that we have, is almost 10,700 employees are within the downtown area, almost 1,300 residents that live downtown. We have 8 city parks, 583 businesses, over 4,100 public parking spaces, both on and off-street. And right now, there's about 32 official downtown events that go on throughout the year. So that gives you a little flavor of what's going on there. Some other statistics which I think are kind of interesting, going back to '04 and then comparing that to last year, the assessed valuation of the downtown area has increased from about 140 to over 221 and $1 million. The taxes paid in '04 were just under $3 million, and now they're at $4.2 million. So again, over that 5-year period, we have seen quite a bit of change in terms of development, property tax increases within the downtown boundaries. Another source of information that we have through Bender Commercial Real Estate is kind of tracking the vacancy rates within the downtown area. This is something that they do on an annual basis. And the bar chart on the left is a 3-year comparison. The most current number, which is on the left side, shows a vacancy rate of around 15%, over 15%. It's about 15.2%. And that has dropped over the last couple of cycles that this has been measured. So the trend line is moving in the right direction. And then we're also anticipating that there'll be an update later on this year of the different segments of the downtown area by the north, the southeast, and the southwest areas. We have approximately 2.2 million square feet of real estate within the downtown area. So the latest vacancy rate that we have is approximately 336,000 square feet of building area. And that includes all types of buildings, whether it's office or retail or other types of uses. Okay. So some of the historical information that we want to go through with you quickly today. A number of previous studies have been done of the downtown. Back in 2002, we had a downtown development plan update that was approved by the City Council. In 2004, the City Council approved an updated version of our River Greenway and Riverfront Master Plan. Last year, downtown Sioux Falls went through a strategic planning process, and we also adopted at the end of last year our Shape Sioux Falls, which also addresses some of the downtown development policies and priorities for the future. So to kind of quickly go through some of those, in terms of the downtown plan, there were a number of major goals identified for the future. That plan was a vision of Sioux Falls downtown to the year 2015, protecting and enhancing the aesthetic appeal of downtown, integrating the Big Sioux River and the falls into downtown, encouraging private sector investment in downtown locations which are designated as high-priority development areas, investing public resources that are necessary to stimulate new economic growth in the downtown, and also providing support for programs and activities that will help maintain a healthy downtown economy, developing downtown as the city's designated arts, culture, entertainment district, expanding outdoor sculpture and visual art, and extending the range of cultural activities and programs. The last two goals are preserving the historic buildings of downtown and providing assistance to promoting the sensitive rehabilitation of underutilized buildings, and also creating space for unique and exciting new uses. And then finally, maintaining an effective transportation system that makes it easy to get into and around downtown. Those were the major long-range goals that were identified within our downtown development plan. As far as the River Greenway and Riverfront Master Plan, as we know, we're now moving ahead with the exciting first stage of that process, that vision. But this is kind of a big picture graphic of the downtown area that extends the Greenway from Falls Park all the way to Faywick Park. So it's a very comprehensive look at what the riverfront and the areas adjacent to the riverfront could be in the future to enhance the use of the river, to make it more desirable for downtown development, including access to the river, activities, events, walking, whatever it might be that people would like to see, as well as dining opportunities. This slide is the portion that we're going to get underway now, the first phase between 6th Street and 8th Street, in addition to replacement of a old railroad bridge with a new pedestrian walkway. So this is going to be a very, very exciting start of the implementation phase of this Greenway project, but we know that we'll still have a long ways to go to complete the overall vision of that entire corridor from Falls Park to Faywick Park. With the Downtown Sioux Falls strategic plan, again, a number of priorities were addressed based on various types of input that Downtown Sioux Falls went through. The priorities that they came up with were to develop downtown as a destination center with historical significance, unique features and attractions, develop a comprehensive development approach with specific emphasis on the north end and the east bank areas, improving retail, restaurant, and general business attraction and development, increase and promote parking availability, continuously improve traffic access, egress, and flow, complete the River Greenway and remove the river ramp, looking at adding approximately 1,000 additional residential units within the downtown, and then significantly improving both the marketing and promotion of downtown through multiple mediums. So those were the general strategies that were identified through the downtown strategic plan. As part of that process, one of the downtown subcommittees called the Development Committee also took a look at some of their more specific goals that they would like to work on. And those included updating and creating a comprehensive downtown development plan with the idea that our downtown plan probably needs to be looked at and updated, which we are going to start working on into next year. Again, looking at how we can increase residential growth opportunities within the downtown, focusing on implementation of the River Greenway development, looking at the whole issue of parking, not only parking availability, but parking locations, as well as, again, addressing the future removal of the river ramp. And then also pushing forward on the relocation of the railroad switching yard within the downtown area. And then finally, as we talked about last year when the City Council adopted our Shape Sioux Falls comprehensive plan, there were a number of areas that pertained to areas within the downtown area. One of those talked about vertical mixed uses, which is kind of a planning jargon for looking at how you would layer different types of land uses within buildings in the downtown area. And one of the focuses is that we would like to maintain an emphasis on retail street level uses with upper level residential or office uses. Looking at streetscape activity, which means that we would focus on making our sidewalks within the downtown as designated spaces for outdoor activity, which we've been doing a lot of in recent years, and with the reconstruction of portions of Phillips Avenue, we've only been able to enhance that even more so. As part of our parking system, again, not only looking at the availability and locations of parking, but as we're looking at the potential for enclosed or structured parking, parking garages, parking ramps, that we would like to look at, again, making a focus on, wherever possible, to have street-level commercial uses within these structures. And this would be in the case that we would build parking structures along a public right-of-way. And then in terms of our multimodal transportation, we want to make sure that we have accommodations not only for vehicular traffic, but also for bicycles, public transit users, and pedestrians. So that's kind of where we've been in terms of looking at some studies of the future of downtown. And with that, these are kind of the major emphasis, again, that we would look at going forward from this point, is how can we encourage, promote, incentivize additional employment opportunities within the downtown, whether it's for office uses, retail, other services, whatever the case might be. What can we do as a community to continue to expand those numbers of downtown workers? As we said before, downtown housing is very, very critical. What we've found around the country is that one of the major successes of downtowns are those that really have a strong focus on residential uses. And residential uses can be everything from apartments to condominiums. Typically a mix of different housing types are the strongest types of residential uses for downtown. Because when you have people living downtown, you have kind of a natural market for the other things that you would want, such as retail, services, entertainment, those kind of things. So it's very critical that we continue to look at expanding that base of downtown residential opportunities. And of course, along with that, as we've said, what can we do to enhance shopping, dining, other types of entertainment within the downtown area? We know that we can continue to provide more open space, not only through the River Greenway implementation, but through other park projects that I'll talk about in a little bit, and other recreation opportunities within the downtown. As I said, we have a number of city parks within the boundaries of the downtown, including not only Falls Park, but also Faywick Park. So we think there's a lot of opportunity to include those spaces as part of the activity center of the downtown area, and also to continue to promote tourism and the visitor industry as part of our overall city economic development strategy. And public investment is going to be a key part of that as well. So, as we start talking about how we can do some of those, work towards some of those priorities, one of the ways that we're proposing to come forward is through a downtown-wide tax increment financing district. Right now, community development is taking the lead on working with downtown Sioux Falls and others in putting together a proposal that will come to the City Council to identify a downtown-wide tax increment financing district. And one of the beginning points of that will be to look at all of the potential redevelopment areas within the downtown. And so this is a map of just some preliminary locations that we'll be looking at in the red areas of all the areas that we think have some redevelopment or expansion potential within the boundaries of the downtown. And we'll be working over the next few months to bring that plan forward to you, with not only looking at how this will encourage private investment downtown, but also how that can provide additional potential revenue for public improvements within the downtown area. One of the active TIF districts that we currently have is the Uptown at Falls Park. And again, although it's been moving a little slower than we had originally anticipated, the developers have been primarily focusing on the Main Avenue portion of redeveloping, rehabilitating some of those historic buildings, which we've been very pleased about. The next phase of new construction that we're hoping to get moving by even early next year would be along Phillips Avenue in that area between 4th and 5th Streets. And this is a concept plan of what that might look like. Again, that vertical mixed use of first floor retail with office or residential uses on the upper floors. Also, another incentive program that we've had in place for a number of years to encourage the rehabilitation of historic buildings is our facade easement program. And right now, the project that's underway is the building at 10th and Main, which is going through a major transformation of completely restoring the two facades on Main and 10th, putting in brand-new windows, restoring the old brick facade, and turning that into a very viable building that will be used in the future for some major office tenants. Another investment that the city is doing through our capital improvement program is the reconstruction of 8th Street. And we are in the final stages of completing the first phase from the Big Sioux River Bridge going west to Main Avenue. In our capital program, we're looking at expanding that, or continuing that, I should say, from Main Avenue going west all the way to Minnesota Avenue with additional streetscape improvements. And then we'd also like to, in the future, find a way that we could provide budget for going east of the Big Sioux River Bridge all the way to Weber Avenue, and including that East Bank area as part of the 8th Street reconstruction enhancements. I think everybody will agree that it not only has changed the character, the visual character of downtown, but it really, again, enhances the pedestrian vitality of the downtown area, including what we've done on Phillips Avenue. The Falls Park Master Plan, which is a project that has been put together by Parks and Recreation in conjunction with the Park and Recreation Board, is a very aggressive long-term look at enhancing not only Falls Park to the north, but also going west over to Phillips Avenue. And again, I think there's a lot of great ideas of how we can continue to improve Falls Park as a destination, not only for the community, but also for visitors and tourism. So we need to continue to work at how we can implement some of the long-term vision of this master plan. As we talked about with previous updates, we are working aggressively on the railroad relocation project, and as we see the schedule now, we're looking at, in that 2014 range, to have the switching yard removed within the downtown. This graphic shows you the amount of land within the downtown that will be made available potentially for redevelopment. It's going to be approximately 16 acres of land area, extending north of 6th Street and down south to the 10th Street Viaduct. So we will be looking at what is going to be the future use of that land as we move forward with the railroad switching yard phasing, to make sure that not only the city will have some say into the use of this property, but also to make sure that we all have the same vision for what the timing and availability will be of the redevelopment of this property within the downtown area. Again, some great opportunities. The stockyards. This is a video that we've done within our office that kind of shows you a flyover. We're looking at, in the future, an overpass that would connect Rice Street to Russell Street. There's some additional railroad work that would be done at the stockyards. And then on the west side is the idea for a potential plaza or memorial to the stockyards, the railroad, some of the uses that have been there historically. Right now, we are still working with TJN to look at alternative sites besides the stockyard. Their conditional use has been deferred again for another 3 months, and I still feel very confident that we will be successful in finding them an alternative site, but then we still need to come back and work with the developer or the property owner of this stockyard's 35 acres, again, to look at how this can be redeveloped into a type of use that will be very compatible with downtown, with Falls Park, and with the overall future of the Sioux Falls comprehensive plan. The next thing that we're working on is looking at the Minnesota Avenue corridor. In the Midtown section, as we call it, which extends from 2nd Street down to 14th Street. We've kind of broken that into two segments. The first segment is going from 2nd Street to 8th Street, of looking at gateways, potential development along that corridor, either side of Minnesota Avenue, such as general commercial, mixed-use commercial, looking at the historic district, which is on the west side, and of course the Pettigrew Heights neighborhood. And then the next segment would be from 8th Street down to 14th Street, again looking at potential employment centers, commercial uses along that corridor, the historic district, and again the Pettigrew Heights. What we would like to do is see how we can implement some of the Shape Sioux Falls recommendations of a major corridor like Minnesota Avenue, which is to develop an attractive street corridor that enhances and reinforces adjacent development. As we look at how this corridor is going to impact as we get closer to the residential uses on either side of Minnesota Avenue, going up and down along that section, and then determining what the general density and setback should be for those neighborhoods that are adjacent to Minnesota Avenue, again looking at the development patterns. So again, these are some kind of futuristic things that we're looking at along the Minnesota Avenue corridor itself. And that process will include not only the Midtown portion adjacent to downtown, but the entire Minnesota Avenue corridor through the center of the city. And again, as part of that, looking at the Pettigrew Heights neighborhood, one of the high-profile land areas is the Gigglebees block. And again, this is a video of looking at some potential redevelopment ideas of enhancing commercial development along the Minnesota Avenue frontage, and then looking at a transition to residential, higher density residential uses along the west side of that block, and how the two can coexist. We would like to work with the private sector to come up with redevelopment ideas. We don't anticipate that the city would go out and purchase this property like we did with the proposal that the City Council will be considering tonight, which is the St. Joseph Catholic Housing Project. In this case, we would like to work with private developers to give them ideas of what is compatible for this area and look at what assistance the city could provide in terms of redevelopment incentives, and also promoting the idea of affordable housing in this area, which is adjacent to the Pettigrew Heights area, as actually part of the Pettigrew Heights neighborhood area. So that's a very quick overview of not only some of the historic studies that we've done with the downtown, but again, giving you a flavor of what the community has said should be the priorities for the future and some of the challenges that we will have moving forward to try to implement those priorities as a city government, working with downtown Sioux Falls and working with the private sector. And I think there's still time for questions and answers.
Sure.
If you have any.
Questions, Councilor Aguilar?
Being a Sioux Falls girl, I was interested in the boundaries. How and when were the downtown boundaries determined? Because back in the day, it was a much smaller area.
Yes. When the original downtown development plan was done, the boundaries of downtown were smaller. They did not extend as far to the north or as far to the east. And again, as we worked with downtown Sioux Falls and getting input from the community, we wanted to make sure, first of all, that we incorporated the future expansion of Falls Park as part of the downtown area. And so the Falls Park North Master Plan was important to know what the future of that would be. And then going east beyond the Big Sioux River and beyond the railroad tracks, again, with the East Bank area becoming more and more of a focus and extending past Weber Avenue, we felt that there was a lot of opportunity to work with those businesses, to work with those property owners along East 8th Street to help become part of the downtown. This also provided the eligibility of property within the boundary to utilize tax increment financing, property tax abatements, the facade easement program. So it was also a way of expanding some of the development incentives that we could provide to the community. And that happened approximately 5 years ago that we expanded the boundaries.
Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Mike. Facade easement program, the administration cut that budget by how much?
I think for next year it's at 95,000.
Used to be about 150.
Yep. And, you know, there's still a lot of interest in that program, which we're grateful for. We're not getting as many applications as we have in the past, but we know that we would like to continue to work on implementing that project. And we've also talked, community development is looking in the future of maybe modifying that to make it more of a storefront renovation, to actually even expand the eligibility beyond just historic facades.
The Falls Park Master Plan, how much was cut from that?
I do not have that information in front of me. I'd have to go back and look at the CIP.
It was cut significantly, though, wasn't it?
I believe that we did reduce the amount of money in the Falls Park budget for the CIP. I don't have the number in front of me, but we can find that for you.
On the TIF districts for downtown, we've never done a TIF outside of downtown, have we? So what is different about this proposal?
The difference with this one, Councilor Brown, is that when we first started doing TIFs in the downtown, we did a downtown-wide tax increment district. And then once that program basically phased out, then we went back to project area TIFs within the downtown. The Commerce Center, the Phillips Center, a number of building projects that were done, the Minnesota Center. And so what we've talked about of going back to this concept of a downtown-wide tax increment district is again a way of capturing that increase in valuation that can be used not only for site-specific redevelopment projects, but also as a way to help generate revenue for other public enhancements, whether it's the Big Sioux River Greenway or parking needs. And we are looking at that additional revenue as a way to implement some of those priorities for the future.
How do we prioritize these if we cut these downtown budgets?
Well, in this case, what we would do is we would identify all of them in terms of what their redevelopment potential is going to be, how much additional tax revenue they could potentially generate.
But beyond the TIF, Falls Park,
Okay, I'm
the
sorry,
earlier
I
issues I
misunderstood.
was talking about, if they're a priority, why are we not funding them at levels that they were before?
Well, again, I think that's what we need to take another look at in the future. This is kind of a beginning point of giving those of you that are new to the council and those of you that have been around a while, as well as the Downtown Sioux Falls group, to maybe step back and say, you know, we've talked about these things in the past. Now as we move forward, are these still going to be the priorities? And if they are, what do we need to do to make sure that we can implement them and that we do implement them? So I think that's a legitimate question that we need to look at for the future.
What specific sort of TIF projects do you expect in this boundary?
In terms of the private or the public?
Both.
Okay. With the private redevelopment, many of those red areas have been earmarked for future office, retail, or residential uses. And I think one of the ways that we can go back and work with these property owners is, again, to look at helping them understand what the downtown market is going to be. Because prior to the recession that kicked in a couple of years ago, I think the big focus was on major new offices that would come downtown. But in the future, maybe we need to look at smaller, more site-specific services, and again, focusing more on the variety of housing or residential opportunities that people want to have within various locations of the downtown area. So I think it's going to be a combination of retail, office, and residential uses within those different use areas. And then the green area would again be implementation of our Riverfront Master Plan. And as you heard from Darren Smith, as we move forward with future parking improvements, if the parking system needs additional revenue, is the TIF one of those potential sources that we could look at? I think that's some of the questions that we would look at and bring forward to the City Council as recommendations.
Councilor Intiman?
Say, Mike, for those of us out there or some of the viewers or listeners that we might have out there, can you explain a little bit about what the TIF is?
Sure.
Just explain what
Yep.
it is.
A tax increment district is a concept that is allowed by state law that essentially allows either developers or government entities to capture additional property taxes that are generated from new construction, and that those additional property taxes can be utilized for reimbursing private development costs and also for making public improvements within a specified area.
And usually for a limited period of time, too, is
Yes.
that right?
That's by state law, that it's for a limited period of time. So it's a way of providing for the private sector some financing assistance, and for the public sector, it's a way of promoting or providing additional ways of funding public improvements.
And for our communities, really, in the state of South Dakota, this is one of the few tools that we can have to assist development in our communities. Is that not correct?
That's correct, and one of the reasons that we've focused on the downtown historically with this program is because the downtown has more challenges and typically more cost in terms of redevelopment. You're usually working on assembling multiple parcels of land, and the cost of the land, the cost of making the improvements, the cost of building vertically versus horizontally is typically more than it would be in the outlying suburban areas. And so that's a reason why we felt historically it's important to provide this as a way of encouraging reinvestment into the downtown area.
I know we've had some extremely challenging times economically recently, and some of our development, we've seen some proposals happen downtown that have fallen through for whatever reason. Can you, and I know it's too early in a lot of cases, but can you tell us, has there been a pickup in interest in the downtown area? Can you give us a little insight into what we might see in the future as far as requests for additional information from the private sector, or anything like that, Mike?
I think, and I didn't plan to get into a lot of detail today because we could spend a lot of time on each one of those parcels, but obviously the most recent positive announcement is the Midland building, with Avera Health moving into that building. We also know that we're moving forward with a request for proposals to consider redevelopment of the city land on 8th Street next to the river ramp. And we believe that we are going to get some strong response to that proposal for downtown development. As I mentioned, the Uptown at Falls Park Group, although it's moving slow, they still remain optimistic that they can move forward with the next phase of their project along Phillips Avenue in 2011. So we're seeing these little bits of good news come forward. And again, I think as we look at what I'm hearing more talk about is the downtown housing market, whether it's condominiums or apartments. I'm hearing more people interested in pursuing ideas for downtown housing opportunities, which again I think is pretty exciting. And of course, the retail along Phillips Avenue, Main Avenue has been very positive the last year or so.
Great.
That vacancy number that I showed you before, I would say the majority of that is primarily some of the office buildings that we have downtown, like the Security Bank building, which is just south of City Hall. That was a major redevelopment project that has residential above it, but the office retail portion is still vacant on the lower levels.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go.
Councilor, I'll be very brief. Also, in the spirit of trying to spur on some of the economic development opportunities, even though the times have been tougher than what we would like, there have also been RFPs that have been done in the past where there's not been the development efforts that we had hoped for or that prior city councilors had hoped for. We are right now re-energizing or re-engaging those developers or those investors to find out when in fact they are going to begin to do something. And you'll be hearing updates on those here, Councilor Entenmann, as well as the rest of the City Council in the very near future. And that'll be coming from the Community Development Office. And we're excited to tell you more about that as well.
Councilor Erpenbach.
A couple questions for you, Mike Cooper, please. I want to piggyback on Councilor Aguilar's question about the definition of downtown. If you look at the slide that says 2004 statistics at the top,
Yes.
the assessed value in 2004 was $139 million. When were the boundaries changed?
I think that was after that figure? Yeah, 2006. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so
It's been 3 years and not,
okay. So my
Yeah.
question then is, if a defined boundary is worth X number of dollars 1 year, and then a larger area is defined later, how much of this change between 2004 and 2009 is based strictly on the size of the area
Yes.
changing?
we should separate that out so that we
I
have a
really
fair
need,
comparison.
I need to understand that. I need to know,
Yes.
I need that to happen, and we need to talk about that a little more in depth then
I
if we
think
can
one of
figure that out.
the reasons we didn't include it is that we weren't able to find that information, but we'll go back. I think we can go back and look at the records at the County Equalization Office and make that determination.
That would be,
Yes.
that would be really good. It would be helpful in this conversation as well.
Oh, okay.
Erica's coming to save the day.
Oh, I just have a quick response to that. Most of the boundary expansion was to accommodate Falls Park and then the Beetle Greenway on the east side of the map. So a lot of the land that was included in the boundary in 2006 is actually city property. So there's not a lot of differentiation there, but we can get you that better assessed valuation.
That's a good perspective. I appreciate that, Erica, because that is something that people are asking me about, and it has started to muddy the waters when we talk about the bid districts and those kinds of things down there. So I would appreciate that additional information. Thank you, Erica. Then I have another question about farther down on the slides. I don't know what number it is. It's in the downtown plan goals. The top point is invest the public resources necessary. The second goal on that page, yep, that's the one, is develop downtown as the city's designated arts, culture, and entertainment district. Can you tell me what group developed this as a plan, as a goal? Who was this group that created this and set that entertainment district as a
Yeah.
priority?
The downtown plan was a plan that was established through not only city staff, but downtown Sioux Falls input, the public input, and then ultimately it went to the city council for final approval.
So it was really a pretty broad group of folks that
Yes.
were involved in the conversation?
Correct.
Okay. And this, remind me again, I have to look back at these sheets now. What year was this developed?
That was done in 2000 and
That's part of the 2002.
Yep.
Okay, so we're coming up on 10 years that's sort of been our focus for downtown arts, culture, entertainment.
And again, that's one of the areas that we would like to look at updating because it is getting somewhat dated. And it did include the old boundaries of the downtown area.
Right.
Back in
exactly.
'02.
Okay, good. Then, if I might, would it be appropriate to ask about Agenda Item 12 while we have you, Mike? Is that an appropriate question to ask now, or do I need to wait till the 7 o'clock meeting? Can you give us some insight on that? Why we're deferring it, why we're... I know it's a sticky subject, but can we walk on
I'll
it a
defer
little bit?
to Dave Fifley.
Councilor Erpenbach, there is pending litigation by the Ronning companies regarding, I believe, 5 different apartment housing complexes that are within the business improvement district for downtown. 4 of those are part of the Beetle Greenway plan development, and one of them that is on the agenda for tonight is a Zone C3. And tonight, the city attorney's office will be requesting a deferral of that action on that item until the first meeting in January, which is, I believe, January 3, due to that pending litigation.
They didn't file that request for the change until after the litigation started, is that correct?
I can't tell you an exact date, but I believe that is the case, but I can't swear to that.
I think so, yeah. I think so.
That is correct.
Yes.
So if we defer it, and this is just my naivety, if we defer it, it just keeps the boundaries and the designations the way that they are, and we would prefer that to happen and to stay that way until the litigation is completed. Is that correct?
Councilor Erpenbach, this would not change the boundaries of that business improvement district downtown. All it would do is change the zoning designation of that particular
piece.
property within the boundaries of that
But it would
business
stay
improvement district.
inside the boundaries of the bid district?
Yes.
It would stay
Yes.
within the boundaries, yes.
Thank you.
Either way.
Thank you for simplifying for me. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Rolfing, or I'm sorry, City Attorney, did you have something else you wanted to?
No, I just thought if Councilor Aguilar had a question
All right.
too, sorry.
Yes. You'll help me run the show here.
In light of the recent articles that I read about the water, the purification, or the
Water quality.
quality of the water, how are we going to take care of that as we make this all beautiful downtown, which I am wholly in favor of. I think it's a great way to do that, but I really hate to sit next to mud walking or going down the side of where I eat, or muddy water, let's put it that way. Are we able to take a look at this problem, most of it coming from what I believe the Skunk Creek is where most of that was coming, as I read
Yes.
the articles and things?
That's going to be a much broader, comprehensive look at the entire river corridor.
Right.
Including Skunk Creek. And as somebody said, I think even today, what was the phrase that was used about the cattle? Do you remember, Mayor? Okay.
But he won't say it, huh?
There's a strong correlation with the use of cattle along
Yeah.
the river upstream, both the Big Sioux and Skunk Creek. But yes, that's something that we are working on, we'll be working on more comprehensively along with other people to find ways that we can enhance the water quality of the river through the city of Sioux Falls.
As people like to say, they like that San Antonio thing, but the San Antonio River Walk was a man-made thing.
Yep.
It's not a
Storm
natural
drainage.
river, and they can keep that nice and clean. So
One of the initial focuses of the Greenway was to look at how we can stabilize the water level through
Right.
downtown, but obviously the water quality is also something
Yeah.
that we would like to talk about.
I would
Councilor
just
Aguilar.
interject that San Antonio's isn't clean either. I was there.
No, it was. I was there
once a year.
I was there about 15, 20 years ago, I guess. So it was then. Let's put it that way. Okay.
Councilor Aguilar.
I was just wondering when the switching yard is moved, whose land is it?
The intent is when that switching yard is abandoned and removed, that the city will own that property, and the city will be able to determine the future redevelopment of that property.
Thank you.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the conversation that Mr. Rolfing had about the water, quality here in Sioux Falls, I seem to remember a couple of years ago, and I think, Mr. Cooper, you might know this better than I, but it's the East Dakota Water Conservation District.
Water Development District?
Water Development District has been buying easements of land alongside the river up north of here for some time, and I think that's a continuing process that they're doing, depending on the funds. Is that correct, Mr. Cooper?
Yes, there have been improvements made.
But what that does is keeps animals back off and builds a green filter, so to speak, for water that runs down into the river.
And also working with farms on best management practices, trying to keep cattle out of the river, keeping kind of a buffer adjacent to the riverbank when they're grazing.
Councilor Anderson.
Back to the downtown area boundary, something that Councilman Brown brought up was that he remembers most of the TIFs being used in the downtown area. One of the screens that you had showed the Gigglebees block. Now, that's outside of our downtown area. Now, if that developer came to us and wanted to use a TIF, would we consider that also, though, being
Yes.
outside of that?
Yes, the Pettigrew Heights neighborhood is eligible for tax increment
And down
finance.
Minnesota Avenue
Yes.
then? And
Yep.
so we are looking at using TIFs in other areas of the city other than the downtown area?
Right, the core area neighborhoods, including Pettigrew Heights, the city council has authorized that to be eligible for tax increment financing. thank you for that clarification, too.
Any other questions? I've got a couple maybe, Mike. Is there a way that that boundary to the west that is the Minnesota Avenue, is there a reason we can't just move it over to Spring Avenue so that all those homes or all those businesses along Minnesota on the west side could be potentially included?
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about that the last time we looked at modifying the boundaries of the downtown. The downtown plan that was done in '02 actually did extend, as a study area west of Minnesota Avenue. But again, based on public input, the decision was made to keep that Minnesota Avenue as the boundary line. But it went through a lot of discussion to get to that decision.
Seems like a lot of opportunity on that west side of Minnesota Avenue, but, okay, and then also I had the Downtown Sioux Falls group, they've been involved in this whole discussion, right? They've been a part of this?
Right. They've been involved in the Greenway Plan, the Downtown Plan, Shape Sioux Falls, and of course their own strategic planning process.
And then the Uptown, are they approaching some deadlines, timelines that are, is there something that's possibly going to end if they don't do something? Or I'm just hearing stuff?
You want to talk about that one, Erica?
Thank you. We're actually working internally with the city attorney's office to make an amendment basically to the existing agreement that they have in place. Just based on previous conversations, I think that you'd find Mr. Lloyd has made quite a financial commitment already in that project, and so we're willing to give him until almost the end of next year to purchase a portion of that property and also to complete both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of that property. But that was one of the projects that the mayor was alluding to earlier that we'll be bringing you an update on in the very, very near future.
I was just going to add that having a new residential, having new residents living downtown would be just like a gold mine for the city. So that's a sensitive one. Okay, the other last question I have or comment is that I know this guy that you guys have all worked with, my father. He took me one time to the north end of Falls Park, and it had a dream about building an entryway into the Falls Park on the north side, somehow where Rice could circle around the penitentiary, and off of, I think it's 4th or something, there would be a road that would curve down and go around the backside of Morrell's and give us a great entryway into the falls. Is that part of this? I was having trouble keeping up with that little animation that Jeff was running, but is that part of the big plan, big picture?
Yes. It doesn't show it completely on this exhibit, but the grand plan is to continue Phillips Avenue all the way north up to North Drive. That's the vision. At that time, Commissioner and then Councilor Jameson had kind of started to make that more of a north entrance into the downtown area. So that is still in our long-range transportation plan to accomplish that. But that would be Phillips Avenue extending up to North Drive and creating a whole new intersection up in that area. The other new idea that I talked about with the stockyards is a viaduct that would go above Falls Park, connecting Russell Street over to Rice Street.
That's the one I would think he had shared with me anyway.
Yep, because that's one that we've heard people say we need better east-west access
right.
To the airport area, to that north side of the city. And that's another long-range idea that we like to keep on the drawing board, as they say.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, I just wanted to comment, too, that on the railroad relocation plan, the original switching yard that was just a little bit it was on the north side and a little bit farther east from the Great Bear entrance. That was the original site for the railroad switching yard. And this weekend, I went out and walked from that place to the new proposed switching yard that was up there by the NSP and in between up by the old Pathfinder plant. And I was uneasy with the first one because I had concerns about flooding because I've seen water come up out of the river down there, particularly, I think, in 93 and 97, and come up almost to the railroad tracks that's existing through there. But the new location seems to me to be about 20 or 30 feet higher in elevation. It's nice and flat up there. It's by the Pathfinder plant. There's highline wires that probably are not going to go away, and I just felt a lot better about that new proposed location for the switching yard.
Well, the first option would have to, as part of the environmental assessment, would have to pass the muster of looking at the floodplain impacts. So
Of course.
that would be part of that review process.
If I would add one more, I don't know if it's possible, Mike, I know you're probably in charge of this plan, and this,
I'm in charge of presenting it. A lot of other people helped
but I
put
mean,
it together.
in the end, somebody's got to keep this pushing forward, and
Yes.
accountability, and are you the guy?
I think I'm the guy and Erica is the lady.
Okay, Erica would be,
One of the exciting things is that when I became mayor, I really wanted to get Mike Cooper engaged at an even higher level again. And I think I wanted him to think bigger and think broader with even more energy and excitement. And I think that he's beginning to do that. And so, Councilor Jamison, to your point, yes, I think that, Mike Cooper is going to be the leader of this effort, along with good people like Erica and Darren Smith and folks like that. But ultimately, if you need anything on any of these topics, go to Mike, challenge him, hold him accountable, and ultimately let's keep going. So, Councilor Jameson, yeah, he's the guy.
thank you. One of the things I was listening and reading through this and following you was that I was struggling to keep up with the money. How much money are we spending here and there, and in essence, how much is the city spending in this downtown development area, and how much does the city spend in its core area like this? Just in a total, if you could add in your future presentations.
Sure.
Some quantitative method for us to understand what the city is reinvesting or investing in our downtown area, and I don't know that would be necessary as far as compared to the rest of the city, but I'm just struggling, at least for myself, to compare the attention that the city is truly giving to our downtown area compared to other parts. So if you could.
You bet. That comes back to Councilor Brown's question about how much money are we spending on different capital investments. And you
Sure.
can certainly do that. That would be pretty easy
Great.
to put that together as an addendum to this.
Okay, well, thank you. Anything
Yeah.
else?
I'd just like, again, to thank Eric
yes.
and Jeff Schmidt for helping put this together.
Is Jeff part of the team?
Jeff is part of the team, yes.
All right, Jeff. Good. Okay, if we don't have any
Thank
other
you.
questions, thank you, Mike, Eric, and Jeff. If we don't have anything, I wanted to remind the group that we do have a fiscal committee meeting starting. Chair and clerk, when would you like that to start?
As soon as we can transition.
Okay, give us just 5 minutes, the clerk says. 5:20. We'll start the fiscal committee here in this chambers. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned.